Over the years, Google has had some spectacular failures, from Google Glass and Google Plus to Google VR and Google Nexus. But while unfortunate, these failures are what made Google. It was always their willingness to experiment and shoot for the moon that created so many successes along the way, whether that be Chrome, Android, YouTube, or Gmail. But one failure that was unlike the rest was actually one of their most recent failures: Google Stadia. If you're not familiar with Stadia, it was Google's attempt at entering the gaming space, and more specifically, the cloud gaming space. The idea was that instead of spending hundreds of dollars on a console or thousands of dollars on a PC, you could just stream 4K games directly from Google. You simply pay an upfront fee of $130 for a starter kit and then a $10 per month subscription afterwards. From the very beginning though, Stadia didn't quite live up to Google's expectations. For example, in 2020 they were targeting 1 million monthly active users, but they ended up falling short at 750,000. This was nothing to scoff at though, as it gave them a 5 to 10% share of the entire cloud gaming market within just 2 years of launch. We should also mention that Microsoft and Sony's cloud gaming market shares are largely skewed to the upside because their offerings come along with Game Pass Ultimate and PlayStation Plus Premium. As such, a lot of these subscribers don't even use Microsoft and Sony's cloud gaming offerings, but they're nonetheless counted for market share purposes. So within the niche of cloud gaming, Stadia was actually doing really well. It garnered some rather strong reviews despite being a subscription model and being from Google, two things that people are usually not the biggest fans of. And while it obviously had its issues like any other new product, gamers were rather optimistic about the upcoming Stadia exclusives and the cloud gaming space in general. But for whatever reason, on September 29, 2022, Google announced that they would be shutting down Stadia at the start of 2023. This was a direction that even Google's own internal Stadia team wasn't aware of. In fact, the Stadia team was publicly assuring users that Stadia wasn't going anywhere just 2 months before this. As such, shutting down Stadia was very much an executive decision that was made as part of a broad effort to cut costs across the company. So here's the story of the time that Google idiotically killed a promising product. Taking a look back, the story of Stadia takes us back to the beginning of 2018 to a man named Phil Harrison. Phil was a lifelong gaming executive, having entered the industry with his own game studio back in 1986. Since then, he had risen to be the president of Sony's worldwide PlayStation Studios and a VP on Microsoft's Xbox team. He also held board member seats at several gaming companies. So when Google started off 2018 by hiring Phil as a VP, it was clear that Google was entering the gaming space. They would spend the rest of 2018 attending a bunch of gaming events to recruit game developers who could make their ambitious vision a reality. You see, Google wasn't just trying to create a game streaming service, but a game streaming service that could be run on Chrome itself. And somehow, Google's new engineers would make this wizardry viable by the end of 2018 itself, when they quietly launched a limited beta of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. A couple of months later, in March of 2019, Google would host a more formal unveiling of Stadia. And later that year, Google would officially launch Stadia on November 18, 2019 with a total of 22 launch titles. The consensus of the launch was pretty ubiquitous. Almost all reviewers agreed that the technology itself was nothing short of revolutionary. With the right internet connection, Stadia truly did deliver a revolutionary gaming experience. But that was also their biggest critique. You needed the right internet connection, preferably fiber, which most people simply did not have. So while the tech behind Stadia was heavily praised, reviewers were skeptical regarding whether that tech was actually applicable to the average person. But this was nothing unique to Stadia. This was the case with every cloud gaming solution, most of which Stadia was far ahead of in every other aspect. Aside from some concerns from reviewers, there were also some die-hard gamers who weren't the biggest fan of Stadia. Usually though, these were just enthusiasts with unrealistic expectations for a brand new cloud streaming service like this person, who took to Reddit to rant about how much Stadia sucks. They didn't find much support on Reddit though. In fact, almost all of the replies to this thread were in support of Stadia. I play almost exclusively on Chrome. Maybe I'm just not as fussy as most people. 200 hours in Borderlands 3 on Chrome. I had no idea it sucked the whole time. No, it doesn't suck. No issues here whatsoever. Maybe your setup internet ISP just sucks. I think this is more of a you problem and not a Chrome problem. Everything I've played looks great in Chrome. I have no issues on Chrome. Weird, I've been playing on Chrome and it's fantastic. This isn't to say that the OP didn't have valid concerns. It's basically a certainty that Stadia was inferior to dedicated gaming rigs worth thousands of dollars. This, however, wasn't the target market for Stadia. The target market was casual gamers who were looking for a cheap way to enjoy decent gaming, and that's exactly what Stadia offered, and a lot of people loved it. That's why Stadia was able to reach 750,000 monthly active users by the end of 2020 itself. For any new game company, these numbers would have been insane. But for Google, they were rather disappointing, leading us into Google's main dilemma with Stadia. If you look at any public statements Google has made about Stadia, you'll immediately see one common thread: just not enough. It wasn't that Stadia wasn't profitable or that the tech didn't work or that their core users didn't like it. Rather, it was simply that everything that Stadia had achieved was simply not enough. Honestly, this is extremely confusing from Google because historically, they've had to wait several years, if not over a decade, before many of their products became lucrative. And a lot of those products cost a lot more to maintain, like YouTube. I mean, it's no surprise that storing billions of hours of videos for free is extremely expensive. And that's why it took Google 10 to 15 years before YouTube became a profitable venture. And what about the Pixel? Google has been trying to break into the smartphone market since the beginning of smartphones, yet they still don't even control 1% of the global smartphone market. Not to mention, Pixels aren't sold with very big margins, so Google may very well be losing money with the Pixel, but they refuse to give in. It's the same thing with Google Fiber and Google Plus and Google Fi and Google Meets and Google's Enterprise Cloud Business and several other Google services. While these never quite lived up to their expectations, Google has given them plenty of time and immense resources to succeed. And it was only when there was absolutely no way forward that they finally threw in the towel. The same, however, cannot be said about Stadia, where they almost immediately threw in the towel when they saw underwhelming performance. And one of the main reasons for this was that they came in with extremely unrealistic expectations. To be honest, I don't even think their frame of reference was other streaming services like GeForce Now, which has 20 million registered users. I mean, just take a look at how Sundar described Stadia.
With Google, your games will be immediately discoverable by over 2 billion people on a Chrome browser, Chromebooks, Chromecast, Pixel devices, and we have plans to support more browsers and platforms over time. That's in addition to all the people playing and watching games across YouTube and Google Play. So now we are focused on our next big effort, which is to build a game platform for everyone. And when we say for everyone, we really mean it. It's one of our most cherished values as a company. Be it Android or Chrome or AI, we are dead serious about making technology accessible for everyone.
Hearing that, it seems that Google was hoping to create something on the scale of the Play Store or Android straight off the bat, just because Stadia was accessible by so many people. You don't have to be a genius to see how that's a rather faulty line of reasoning. Just because Google could put Stadia in front of billions of people, it doesn't mean that billions of people would be interested. In reality, the cloud gaming market is still very much a new industry that was only worth $1.25 billion in total in 2021. So Stadia's estimated revenue of $76 million accounted for over 5% of the entire market within just 2 years of launch. Even if Stadia didn't grow their market share and simply grew with the market, their 5% share may have been worth $2 billion worth of revenue by 2030. If they were able to grow to 20 or 25%, it may have been worth closer to $10 billion worth of revenue, resulting in a business worth tens of billions. For perspective, that by itself would be a Fortune 500 company. But Google wasn't willing to stick it out, which brings me into their next pitfall, which is that they couldn't handle being early. People will often tell you that you want to be early to a market. That's how you get the first mover advantage and dominate your industry. But ironically, Google has never done that ever. All of their most successful products were either launched in line with market trends or extremely late. In fact, Google was years if not decades late to search, email, and browsers. As such, every industry they disrupted already had a massive audience. Even in the industries that Google failed, like social media and video conferencing, they never really had a user issue, they only had retention issues. With Google Plus, for example, Google boasted 540 million users. Now, 90% of sessions didn't even last 5 seconds, but again, that's a retention issue, not a user issue. In basically every industry that Google has entered, getting users was never really a problem for them because of their ubiquitous nature. All Google had to do was convince these people that their solutions were superior. Sometimes they succeeded in this, sometimes they didn't, and they approached Stadia with this exact same strategy. They created a world-class solution and put it in front of people, but there was one major difference. The cloud gaming market was yet to truly develop, meaning that there was no existing audience to convince. Rather, it was up to Google to appeal to new users and create the market. And it seems that this was not a journey that Google was especially excited to venture down, because the reality is that being early is usually way harder than being late. So they decided to pull the plug in an extremely expensive manner. They promised to refund all Stadia hardware purchases made through the Google Store and all game and game add-ons purchased through the Stadia Store. This resulted in refunds of up to $900 per person. Instead of spending all that money on refunds, Google could have just kept Stadia alive and seen how far it took them. After all, it's not like the operating expenses for Stadia were really a concern for Google. Also, it's not like the cloud gaming market is suddenly gonna stop growing without Google. It'll continue growing into a substantial market, and it'll probably just be controlled by Microsoft, Sony, Nvidia, and maybe Nintendo. In the grand scheme of things though, I guess it doesn't really matter because Google is so big at this point that even another $20 billion in revenue from Stadia doesn't even make a difference. But that doesn't change the fact that what happened to Stadia was still quite a shame. And that is the story of the time that Google killed a promising product simply due to unrealistic expectations and a lack of patience and commitment. Unlike Google, someone who is adamant on not giving up on the gaming market despite terrible economics is Microsoft, who just dived in even deeper with their $70 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Check out this video to learn more, but until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.